Hey lovely people, I know I said that the next video you'll be seeing on my channel would be the classic book haul. However, I was very inspired by Bookratmisty's video wherein she discussed classics and what she thought of classics and why she likes them so much. If you're not really sure what video I'm talking about, then I'll link it here, because this video will probably make a lot more sense if you go watch hers first. And she started the discussion, so you should totally go check that video out. And I'll put the link here. Right here. Ooh. Let's talk classics. For me, classics have two definitions, definitely. There are those classics that are classics because someone somewhere at some point in history said that they were classics and nobody has disagreed with them, and nobody is going to ever disagree with them because it's just set in stone now, and you don't go against what scholars have said. It's not something people really do. However, the second branch of classic literature that I feel is a definition is those books that make you feel something. They have an effect on you. They make you laugh, they make you cry, they make you reevaluate your life, and they make you rethink the way you think about life. They affect you on a deeper level. They stay with you for the rest of your life, and you are always going to remember how you felt when you read those books. And I think this kind of transcends time. I don't think that there's a time limit on a classic. I don't think that a book is a classic because it is old. I think that a book is a classic because you're always going to feel emotionally attached to that book, and it will always be a classic to you, and it will hopefully be a classic to a lot of other people too. And it will be one of those books that I read for a really long time. The most recent book that I can think of that made me feel so powerfully about it, and that I was thinking about and I'm still thinking about right now, is Jonathan Safran Foer's Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. That book has a resonant effect on people. It has made me think about things, and it made me cry. I'm gonna admit it, it made me cry. I was sitting there in my library and my friend come from across the library and was like, are you okay? Because you're crying. And I was just like, this book, and the phone is ringing and I don't know who it is. I should probably answer that. I'll be back. I think that it is those kinds of books that are going to be classics, and it doesn't matter when it is written. If it makes you feel that powerfully about it, and if it makes a lot of people feel emotionally attached to that book, or if it makes a lot of people think about that book, then it will become a classic. The reason that I like reading classics so much is that it is a kind of escapism. You're never going to be part of that world where women are painting and writing and they have nothing else to do. That is not the life that we live anymore, and I don't know, there is an idealism about it. There is idealism about wanting to just be able to have that freedom to be outside and to watch nature and to be part of nature that we've kind of lost in time. That obviously applies to more of the older classics, and I'm thinking in particular of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, but there are also those books that make you want to learn. The classics like The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, or Jude the Obscure, where he just devours books and he's not allowed in university, and he reads of his own accord, and the love of learning and the striving to learn against all odds, it just really appeals to me. I think that if you like learning and you like thinking about things, then there's a lot of that in classic literature. There's a lot of trying to do things against all odds, and I think that's that's a good thing. There is also that part of classic literature that it is not difficult to read. I wouldn't say that I find reading classic literature very difficult, but there are those classic literature books that are very difficult to read. I remember when I was about 13 and I was reading Frankenstein, I thought it was hard. I spent about 2 weeks on that book, and I usually zip through books. But I read it and it was brilliant, because it's like when you start to read and you're so frustrated at yourself because you can't read, and then it just opens up this whole new world for you and you get it. And I don't think there's any better feeling than when you don't understand something and then you understand it, and that you prove to yourself that you can understand it and you can read these books, and it's not impossible to read, you just have to work at it. And I think that's something I kind of like doing as well. I like working at things. When I was about 14, I was bored of all the books I was reading because they were not a challenge, they weren't challenging enough for me, and I wanted to give myself a challenge, so I started reading classics, and it was brilliant because all of these worlds opened up and they taught me about learning, they taught me about kind of going against the odds, and they gave me stupid ideas of idealistic romance and all of that, but they were brilliant at the same time. And I'm very thankful that I started reading classics. As I mentioned before, when I first started reading classics, it was a little bit like work. I was working towards understanding them, but it never felt like work. I like reading, I like writing about books. I'm probably strange, but I wouldn't have gone to university and studied English literature for 3 years if I didn't like reading and writing about books. It just wouldn't have happened. But I don't think it has to be work. I think that there are some brilliant classics that you can just lose yourself in, and I think that you don't necessarily have to analyse everything. I think that's why a lot of people think that classics are work, because we spend so much time in school analysing them and over-analysing them and looking for imagery and looking for symbolism in them, that we forget that they're stories. We forget that somebody wrote them for a purpose, and it wasn't so that you could figure out why they used that word in that sentence. They just want to tell stories, and that's all literature is. It's stories. Every piece of literature is a story, if it's fiction or non-fiction. History is a story. It's a story about the past, and it might be real, but it's still somebody's story of what happened in the past, and I don't think we can ever really forget that. And I think once you take the overanalyzing and analysing the book out of the question and make it into a story, it is a lot easier to read. You don't have to start looking for imagery and symbolism in every single thing you read. You don't have to. You can if you want. It's not the be all and end all. And I think that's a lot of where people freak out and they're like, I can't read this. Now on to my favourite and least favourite books that come under the classics heading. I think I definitely have more favourites than I have least favourites. Some of my most favourites though are The Mill on the Floss, which I already mentioned by George Eliot, Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, Dracula by Bram Stoker, I love that book so much, F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby, that's one of my favourite books in the whole entire world. I love that book. Some of my least favourites, Measure for Measure by Shakespeare. I know it's not a book I know to play, but I think the main reason that I don't like that is the way I was introduced to it in sixth form. It was just awful, and no, I just don't want to read it. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I've read it, I just can't get into it, and I can never remember what happens. And I don't know, I don't like those books where they leave you straight after you've read it and you're just like, I don't feel anything for this book. No. I like his other books, I just don't, no, not for Great Expectations. There's also Vanity Fair. I'm finding it really hard to get into. Like, I'm reading it now and it's hard, but I'm going to read it, and I'm hoping that it'll get better. Like, I'll end up really liking it, because I like the story so far. It's just quite slow, and I know that's because of when it was written and the developments in literature and all that kind of thing. I've been studying for way too long, but yeah, that Vanity Fair, and yeah, I can't really think of any other books I've actually really hated. I even quite liked The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, I think it is, and that everyone in my class really hated it, and I was like, you know what, it's kind of good. I quite like it. I'm weird, I know, but yeah, that's my little spiel on this discussion. I really like classics. Tell me if you like classics too, because I hope they do, because I'm going to do all of it very soon. Yeah, I hope you like this video, and I'll speak to you very soon.